think stuff to do with family overwhelms me quite a bit. You know, worry or stress around family side of things, that does overwhelm me quite a bit.
For decades, the memory of Princess Diana has remained a silent, powerful presence inside the halls of Windsor. Now, that memory has become a catalyst for an unprecedented royal alliance. In a decisive joining of forces, Prince William and Princess Anne have aligned to protect Diana's enduring legacy, shattering the delicate balance of power within the palace walls. By placing Diana's history and the direct bloodline back at the heart of the monarchy's future, their unexpected unity poses an existential threat to Queen Camilla's standing. Faced with her greatest royal crisis yet, Camilla finds herself navigating a palace shift where long-held loyalties take precedence over current crowns. The closed doors of Clarence House. Prince William stares at the heavy oak doors of Clarence House. His hands are cold, his chest feels tight. For months, tight medical bulletins have blocked his path. He cannot see King Charles alone. Every visit gets delayed, every request gets denied. Behind those closed doors, Queen Camilla moves like a shadow. She builds a fortress of control and reshapes the daily schedule. She decides who enters and who stays out. Palace aides whisper about a quiet power grab. They talk about documents signed in secret. They whispered about a total restructuring of royal authority. William knows what is happening. Camilla wants absolute control over the crown's administrative core. She wants to rewrite the rules of the institution. But the true danger goes deeper than paperwork. A plain white envelope arrives at his office. There is no return address. Inside lies a single sheet of paper. It bears a typed warning that makes his blood run cold. The note details a calculated strategy to erase Diana's historic legacy from the palace archives. It outlines a plan to strip away the remaining historical protections tied to his mother's name. William's breath catches. He realizes the horrifying truth. This is not just about administrative power. This is a direct assault on his mother's memory. Camilla aims to bury the past to secure her own unyielding future. The prince sits at his desk. The room is dead silent. He knows he is trapped. If he confronts Camilla alone, her faction will twist the story. They will paint him as an erratic, aggressive heir and use the media to crush him. He needs heavy artillery. He needs someone who knows every hidden trap within the royal household. William knows he needs a strategist with decades of survival experience. He needs the most feared royal in the family. He picks up his encrypted phone and dials a direct number. Will Princess Anne answer his call, or is it already too late to stop the takeover? The phone rings twice in the quiet countryside. Miles away at Gatcombe Park, Princess Anne sits at her heavy mahogany desk. She looks at the screen. She recognizes the secure prefix immediately. It is her nephew. It is William. She does not hesitate and picks up the receiver. Anne knows William does not call without an urgent reason. He is a man who keeps his emotions locked down tight. If he is calling her now, the walls are already caving in. Anne listens without interrupting. She hears the tension in his voice and the strain of a man pushed to the absolute edge. William lays out the facts. He tells her about the blocked access to his father. He tells her about the restricted medical updates. William talked about the mysterious administrative changes sweeping through Clarence House. Then he drops the final detail. He mentions the memo regarding Diana's legacy. He mentions the systematic attempt to rewrite history. Silence fills the line. Anne's eyes narrow. Her grip on the phone tightens. For years, she has watched the inner workings of the monarchy shift. She has seen factions rise and fall. But an attack on the foundational history of the House of Windsor crosses a line she will not ignore. Anne is not a woman who responds with panic. She responds with cold, calculating strategy. She has survived decades of royal scandals, media storms, and internal power struggles by staying 3 steps ahead of everyone else. She knows Camilla's ambitions intimately. She knows the queen consort wants absolute dominance. Anne speaks. Her voice is calm, sharp, and steady. She tells William to sit tight. She tells him not to make a single public move. Rash actions will only give Camilla the ammunition she needs to isolate the king further. Anne stands up from her desk. She looks out the window across her vast estate. The game has changed. The quiet erosion of royal traditions has turned into an open siege. She tells William she will pull her own files. assured him she has records from the past 20 years that the palace staff thought were permanently buried. William feels a sudden wave of relief. He is no longer fighting alone. The most formidable woman in the royal family has just stepped onto the battlefield. But what is hidden inside Anne's private archives? What secrets did the palace try to sweep under the rug? The Princess Royal's archives. Far away from the noise of London, the air at Gatcombe Park is crisp and biting. Princess Anne walks across the polished wooden floors of her private study. Her boots click with sharp, rhythmic precision. Every step reflects her unyielding discipline. She wears a thick tweed jacket, practical and entirely devoid of vanity. On her mahogany desk sits a heavy leather briefcase. The brass latches are tarnished with age. Inside rests a collection of papers that the modern royal establishment would prefer to keep locked away forever. Anne unties the leather straps. She lifts the lid and pulls out a faded manila folder marked with a red classification stamp. These are not ordinary household memos. They are confidential administrative logs and private correspondences, and operational records dating back to the late 1990s. They document every subtle shift in palace power. They trace every attempt by inner circle handlers to rewrite institutional history. Her phone buzzes on the desk. It is a secure ping from William. He is waiting for her assessment. He knows she keeps the most meticulous archives in the entire family. Anne does not reply with text. She picks up the receiver and connects directly. Her tone is brisk and businesslike. There is no room for pleasantries. She tells William to listen closely. She opens the first document in the folder. It is an internal Clarence House memorandum from 20 years ago. The memo outlines a secret protocol for managing the public perception of past royal marriages. It details how specific archives can be quietly reclassified or restricted under the guise of estate preservation. Anne's finger traces the signature at the bottom of the page. It is a signature belonging to one of Camilla's most trusted long-serving advisors. William listens on the other end of the secure line. His breath catches in his throat. He realizes the depth of the conspiracy. This is not a sudden, knee-jerk reaction by the current administration. This is a decades-long blueprint. The plan has been waiting patiently for the moment Charles ascended the throne. Now, with Charles's health compromised and daily access heavily monitored, that blueprint is finally being executed. Anne does not mince words. She lays out the cold reality. If Camilla succeeds in sealing these historical divisions, Diana's entire public legacy will be subtly downgraded. Memorial funds will be quietly redirected. Foundation oversight will be absorbed into central administrative pools. The physical spaces dedicated to her memory within royal properties will undergo sudden, unannounced renovations. The public will barely notice the incremental changes. By the time anyone realizes what happened, the erasure will be complete. William feels a cold anger rise in his chest. He remembers walking behind his mother's coffin as a young boy. He remembers the promises made by the institution that her memory would be fiercely protected. Now, the woman who took her place in his father's life is systematically deleting her footprint from the royal narrative. Anne shifts to the next document. This one reveals the financial mechanisms behind the power grab. It details how discretionary funds and patronage networks are being built under a single unvetted executive committee. That committee reports directly to one person, Queen Camilla. There is no parliamentary oversight. There is no check from the Privy Council. It is a private corporate takeover disguised as royal administration. Anne asks William a direct question. Is he ready to push the button on a full constitutional challenge? She warns him that once they cross this line, there is no turning back. It will mean open warfare within the House of Windsor. It will invite massive media scrutiny and test the very survival of the monarchy. William does not hesitate. He answers with absolute conviction. He tells his aunt that he will not stand by and watch his mother's legacy vanish into a vault. Anne nods to herself in the quiet room. A rare, approving glint appears in her eyes. She tells William to meet her in person, not in London, where the walls have ears, but deep within the secure perimeter of her country estate. What secret legal weapon does Anne hold in her briefcase? And how will it shatter Camilla's plans? The 25-year trap. The shadows lengthen across the lawns of Gatcombe Park. The heavy oak doors of the private study remain locked from the inside. Princess Anne stands by the tall window. She watches the gravel drive for any sign of unexpected vehicles. She trusts no one on the estate staff today. Every phone in the main house has been switched off. A dark Range Rover pulls up near the side entrance. The door opens. Prince William steps out into the cold air. He moves with a purposeful stride. He walks straight toward the side entrance without waiting for an escort. William knows every turn of this house. He spent his childhood running through these corridors when he needed a refuge from the crushing weight of London life. Seconds later, the study door clicks open. William enters the room. His face is pale, carved from pure exhaustion and high-stakes stress. He does not waste time with small talk. He drops a heavy leather folder onto the center of the mahogany table. Anne gestures for him to take a seat. She walks over to a sideboard and pours 2 cups of black coffee. She hands one to her nephew. Her movements are entirely steady. She has faced down trade unions, hostile governments, and chaotic family collapses without blinking an eye. This crisis is just another terrain to map. William takes a slow sip of the coffee. The heat helps clear his head. He looks down at the documents Anne laid out earlier. He points to a highlighted paragraph on page 4. He explains that this specific clause is the key to the entire operation. It is an old royal household directive written back in the 1980s. It governs executive assets and administrative boundaries between the sovereign and the heir apparent. Anne leans over the table. Her eyes scan the text. She nods slowly in agreement. The directive contains a vital oversight clause. It states that any major restructuring of core operational assets or historical legacy foundations requires dual sign-off. It needs approval from both the reigning monarch and the senior adult heir. This is the legal tripwire. Camilla's administrative team tried to bypass this requirement. They relied on King Charles's current medical vulnerability to push through single-signature emergency authorizations. They assumed no one would look closely at the fine print of 20-year-old internal protocols. Her team thought they could sneak the paperwork past the legal department under the cover of routine estate management. William lets out a harsh, humorless laugh. He says they grew too greedy. They wanted total control too fast. They thought the crown was already theirs to box up and rearrange. Anne's expression hardens. She points out the dangers still standing in their way. Having a legal clause on paper is not enough. If they present this to the palace legal team right now, Camilla's loyalists will intercept it. They will bury the challenge in bureaucratic delays. They will convince the king that William is acting out of personal disrespect. They will frame it as a disloyal power play by an impatient prince. William leans forward. He places both hands flat on the table. He tells his aunt he has already thought through that exact risk. He is not going to file a quiet memo through standard channels. Instead, he is going to force a direct, face-to-face confrontation inside the sovereign's private study. Anne raises an eyebrow. She asks him if he is completely certain he wants to detonate that kind of explosive device. She reminds him that storming the private study will bring the entire hidden war out into the open. There will be no going back. William looks her dead in the eye. He tells her he has nothing left to lose. He will not let his mother's memory be erased by a quiet administrative coup. What happens when William and Anne finally breach the inner sanctum of Windsor Castle? Things are about to get interesting. The unraveling at Windsor. The high stone walls of Windsor Castle loom under a pale, gray afternoon sky. Inside the state apartments, the atmosphere is thick with calculated luxury and quiet tension. Queen Camilla stands by the long mahogany table in the drawing room. She wears a sharp, tailored emerald dress that commands immediate attention. Surrounding her are her most trusted advisors and senior administrative handlers. They whisper among themselves while reviewing glossy portfolios and architectural layouts for upcoming state events. Camilla exudes an air of absolute calm, but her eyes betray a restless calculation. She believes the hardest part of her grand strategy is already complete. With King Charles resting in his private quarters under heavily monitored medical supervision, the daily flow of official documentation runs entirely through her trusted channels. The administrative bottlenecks that once slowed down her initiatives have vanished. The palace machinery hums precisely the way she wants it to. She turns to her chief of staff and asks about the schedule for the upcoming memorial reorganizations. The advisor nods smoothly, confirming that the transitional funding shifts regarding historical patronages are ready for final approval. They have carefully avoided using explicit terminology that might trigger a red flag in the legal department. By grouping the adjustments under general estate maintenance and modernization, they believe they have successfully bypassed public and familial scrutiny. Little do they know that the foundation of their carefully constructed house of cards is about to collapse. Miles away from the main drawing room, a black security vehicle speeds through the private gates of the estate, bypassing the standard visitor checkpoints. Prince William sits in the back seat, his expression locked into a cold, unyielding mask of determination. Princess Anne sits beside him, adjusting her gloves with mechanical precision. They have coordinated their timing down to the exact second. They know that if they give Camilla's inner circle even a 5-minute warning, the administrative files will be instantly locked, hidden, or shredded under emergency executive orders. The vehicle comes to a sharp halt near the sovereign's private entrance. William steps out first, his boots hitting the cobblestones with purposeful authority. Anne follows closely behind, her presence instantly shifting the dynamic of the security detail stationed at the door. The footmen and protection officers hesitate. They are accustomed to blocking unexpected visitors or redirecting unannounced schedules, but they recognize the unmistakable look of the Princess Royal moving in tandem with the Prince of Wales. No one dares to step forward and bar their path. They move through the historic corridors with swift, silent efficiency. Portraits of former monarchs look down from the paneled walls, silent witnesses to centuries of family betrayal, power struggles, and crown politics. William's mind races back to the warnings tucked inside Anne's confidential briefcase. He thinks of the systematic erasure planned for his mother's historic foundations. The memory of Diana is not just a personal grief, it is the emotional bedrock of his connection to the British public. Allowing a calculated administrative faction to dismantle that legacy for the sake of consolidated control is a betrayal he refuses to permit. They reach the outer threshold of the private study. 2 administrative assistants stationed outside look up in sudden panic. One of them stammers, attempting to block the doorway. He stutters that Her Majesty is currently engaged in a private briefing and cannot be disturbed without a formal appointment. Anne does not even break her stride. She fixes the assistant with a withering, arctic stare that stops him dead in his tracks. She tells him in a voice dripping with absolute authority that they are bypassing appointments today. William reaches out. His hand grips the heavy brass handle of the inner study door. He pushes it open before anyone can raise an alarm. The heavy oak door swings wide with a soft, echoing click. Inside the bright sunlit study, the conversation dies instantly. Queen Camilla turns away from her advisors, her expression shifting from confident amusement to absolute, frozen shock. The documents detailing the asset transfers and legacy restructuring lie spread out across the table in plain view. Her inner circle freezes like statues caught in the middle of a raid. The silence in the room is absolute and suffocating. The collision that everyone in the royal household whispered about in dark corners has finally arrived. Camilla recovers her composure first. She straightens her posture, adjusting her cuffs with a deliberate display of manufactured calm. She asks William what the meaning of this abrupt intrusion is, her tone laced with a sharp edge of condescension. She reminds him that official palace business requires proper protocol and scheduled clearance. William does not flinch. He steps fully into the room, his height and intense gaze dominating the space. He tells her that protocol is precisely why they are here. Anne steps in beside him, dropping the heavy leather briefcase onto the edge of the mahogany table with a loud, definitive thud. The brass latches pop open, revealing the stacked files of historical directives, oversight clauses, and unredacted memos that expose the entire operation. Camilla's eyes dart down to the open briefcase, and for the first time, the color drains slightly from her face. She realizes that her decades-long blueprint has been thoroughly mapped out, exposed, and brought directly to the lion's den. What happens when the true weight of the evidence is laid bare before the queen consort? The sovereign's study. Showdown. The air inside the private study is thick with tension. It feels heavy enough to choke. Queen Camilla stares at the open briefcase on the mahogany table. Her advisors take a slow step backward. They see the danger written across the room. They see the stacked files of historical directives and unredacted memos. They know their carefully built strategy has just shattered into pieces. William walks closer to the table. His footsteps make a sharp sound against the polished floor. He does not raise his voice. His tone is quiet, sharp, and deadly serious. He tells Camilla that her administrative game is completely over. He lays his hand flat on the top document. He points directly to the clause requiring dual signatures for any restructuring of core assets or legacy foundations. Camilla forces a tight defensive smile. Her fingers twitch against the edge of the table. She claims she is only acting on behalf of the king. She insists that King Charles fully approved these modernization efforts to streamline daily palace operations. She looks around the room, expecting her loyal staff to back her up with supporting arguments. The advisors remain silent. They look down at the floor. Princess Anne steps forward. She cuts through Camilla's excuse with absolute coldness. Anne states that emergency single-signature authorizations are legally void when they bypass the direct heir apparent. She adds that altering historical foundations dedicated to Princess Diana violates royal governance protocols dating back decades. Her voice carries the weight of a lifetime of institutional defense. Camilla's carefully maintained composure finally cracks. A muscle twitches near her jaw. She realizes William and Anne did not come here to argue or negotiate. They came with airtight proof. They have the internal memos, the timeline of blocked medical access, and the unredacted asset transfer blueprints. There is no escape route left for her faction. Before Camilla can rally her advisors or invent a new defense, the inner study door swings open again with a soft click. King Charles stands in the doorway. He leans slightly on his polished cane. His expression is grave, exhausted, but entirely clear-eyed. He has been listening from the adjoining private room the entire time. Every pair of eyes in the study snaps toward the monarch. Charles walks slowly into the center of the room. He looks at Camilla, then he looks down at the open files spread across the table. When he speaks, his voice is measured and heavy with disappointment. He says he was never shown the clauses targeting historical legacies. He makes it crystal clear that executive authority does not include erasing the past or overriding constitutional safeguards. Camilla's face loses all remaining color. Her grand plan to seize unvetted administrative control has collapsed in a single, irreversible moment. William watches his father with a quiet sense of vindication. The alliance with his aunt has paid off completely. The institutional trap set by Camilla's inner circle has been dismantled from the inside out. Anne stands tall beside her nephew. She closes the leather briefcase with a sharp snap that echoes through the silent room. The power dynamic within the royal household has shifted permanently. Camilla's greatest crisis has reached its climax, leaving her isolated and stripped of her unvetted ambitions. What happens when the dust finally settles across the palace? And how does this historic checkmate transform the future of the monarchy forever? A transformed monarchy. The silence inside the sovereign private study remains heavy and suffocating long after King Charles finishes speaking. The gravity of the moment hangs in the air like a physical weight. Queen Camilla stands frozen by the mahogany table. Her hands rest flat against the polished wood, as if she is steadying herself against an incoming tide. Her closest advisors have already begun to shrink backwards, melting silently toward the heavy double doors. They know a lost battle when they see one. They know that when the monarch steps in to personally invalidate a covert administrative maneuver, there is no appeal left to file. Princess Anne stands tall and unyielding beside her nephew. She fastens the brass latches of her leather briefcase with a crisp, echoing click. The sound shatters the remaining tension in the room. Prince William maintains his posture, his gaze fixed steadily on the woman who tried to rewrite the institutional history of his mother. The threat to Princess Diana's legacy has been neutralized. The attempted quiet coup has been dragged out of the dark shadows and exposed under the harsh light of constitutional truth. King Charles turns his weary gaze toward Camilla. There is no anger in his eyes, only a profound, sobering disappointment. He tells her quietly that the administrative restructure is canceled, effective immediately. He orders her advisors to leave the room at once. The handlers do not hesitate. They turn and slip out through the doorway, their heads bowed, knowing that their positions within the core inner circle are finished. Camilla realizes she has played her hand too aggressively. She pushed for absolute control too fast. She underestimated the deep-rooted loyalty binding the older and younger generations of the Windsor family together. Without a word, she collects her folders and walks out of the study, retreating into the private residential quarters. She leaves behind a transformed power dynamic that will dictate the rest of the reign. The fallout from the sovereign's study showdown hits the inner workings of the palace like a tidal wave. Within 24 hours, urgent administrative memos go out across every department. The unauthorized executive committee created to handle unvetted asset transfers is permanently dissolved. The historical foundations and charitable trusts tied to Princess Diana's memory are placed under a newly established independent oversight board. This board includes representatives approved by both the sovereign and the direct heir. The attempt to quietly downgrade or erase Diana's historic footprint from royal properties is thoroughly dismantled. Palace insiders whisper about the unprecedented nature of the alliance that brought this about. For years, the media and court commentators assumed that Prince William and Princess Anne operated in separate spheres of influence. They viewed Anne as the traditionalist workhorse and William as the modernizing reformer. But this crisis proves that when the core foundations of the institution are threatened by internal ambition, they form an unbreakable front. They share a fierce dedication to protecting the integrity of the crown from internal overreach. The public perception outside the fortress walls begins to shift dramatically as well. While the palace press office issues a standard, carefully worded statement about routine administrative adjustments, investigative journalists and royal biographers pick up on the subtle earthquake that just shook the household. Reports surface detailing a major structural reset inside Clarence House and Windsor Castle. Sources confirm that Queen Camilla's daily operational influence has been severely curtailed. She will remain at the king's side for public engagements, but her ability to unilaterally direct policy, control access, or reshape historical archives has vanished overnight. William returns to his own offices at Kensington Palace with a renewed sense of clarity and peace. The weight that pressed down on his chest for months has finally lifted. He looks at framed photographs of his mother on his desk, knowing that her legacy is safe from the quiet, bureaucratic erasure that was planned in secret. He picks up his secure phone and dials Gatcombe Park. When Princess Anne answers, there is no need for lengthy speeches. A quiet, mutual understanding passes between them. They have successfully defended the gates. They have proven that no matter how much power an individual accumulates within the palace walls, the historic architecture of the monarchy answers to a higher standard of accountability. As the sun sets over Windsor Castle, casting long shadows across the historic stone battlements, the House of Windsor enters a new era. The internal crisis engineered by Camilla's faction has backfired completely, leaving her isolated and stripping away her unvetted privileges. The crown moves forward under a watchful, unified guard. The legacy of the past is preserved, and the future of the monarchy stands stronger, protected by an alliance that proved invincible when it mattered most. The new royal architecture. The dust finally settles across the royal estates. The structural transformation within the House of Windsor begins to take deep, permanent root. Prince William and Princess Anne realize that temporary defense is never enough to secure the institution for the long term. They meet once more. This time they gather in the quiet, secure study of Kensington Palace to draft a permanent charter. This new protocol ensures that no individual can ever again unilaterally alter historical archives or bypass the oversight of the direct heir. It erects an unbreakable legal fence around the administrative core of the monarchy. Queen Camilla maintains her public-facing duties by the king's side. She attends state functions and formal royal galas with her customary practiced composure. Yet the private reality of her daily position has fundamentally and irreversibly changed. Her ambitious inner circle of handlers and administrative advisors has been completely dispersed. They are replaced by seasoned constitutional secretaries answerable directly to a joint oversight board. The grand administrative takeover she envisioned in secret has turned into a historic lesson on the hard limits of royal ambition. King Charles recognizes the profound wisdom of the checks and measures instituted by his son and his sister. He formally signs the new accountability charter into effect. He understands deeply that the long-term survival of the crown depends entirely on radical transparency and the fierce preservation of its foundational history. The crisis proves conclusively that the modern monarchy cannot afford internal power struggles that threaten to unravel the fragile thread of public trust. As public interest begins to stabilize across the global media landscape, royal commentators note a massive shift in the working dynamics of the family. Prince William steps into an increasingly prominent leadership role. He shares vital administrative responsibilities with a newfound confidence and solid institutional backing. Princess Anne remains the steadfast, watchful guardian of tradition. Her legendary vigilance is now permanently embedded directly into the operational framework of the palace. The memory of Princess Diana remains safely protected, its historic legacy completely shielded from the quiet bureaucratic erasure that was once set in motion behind closed doors. The unprecedented alliance between William and Anne has weathered the most severe palace crisis of the modern era. They did not just stop a quiet coup, they built an unbreakable shield around the future of the British monarchy, ensuring that the mistakes of the past will never be repeated. As the sun sets over the historic stone battlements of Windsor Castle, the House of Windsor stands forever changed. What began as a chilling whisper behind closed doors and a desperate late-night phone call became an unstoppable alliance between a fiercely protective son and Gatcombe Park's most formidable strategist. Prince William and Princess Anne shattered a silent executive takeover. Together, they defended the enduring memory of Princess Diana and forced the monarchy back onto a path of strict accountability. Queen Camilla's grand ambitions have met their match, leaving her isolated and her unchecked influence permanently dismantled. The modern British monarchy has survived its most dangerous internal crisis, yet proving that true loyalty and unyielding courage will always prevail.